Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now, we have former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta, also former U.S. Ambassador to Sweden under President Obama, Mark Brzezinski, and Dean of the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, Eliot Cohen. Today, Secretary Panetta and Dean Cohen will take part in the Zbigniew Brzezinski Initiative's inaugural annual lecture. The topic, subtle dimensions of national power, the U.S. in a post-pandemic world. The webinar is part of the Dean's Speaker Series, and we really look forward to it. Thank you all for being with us this morning.
Thanks so much for being with us. And you said Dr. Brzezinski's name so well. It's like you've done it before.
I missed it.
Secretary Panetta, thank you so much for being with us. You know, early on in this pandemic, Richard Haass, president of the CFR, had said that he didn't expect the pandemic to change history, but he did expect it to accelerate a lot of trends. We have seen that happening over the past year. What are the implications for U.S. power?
Well, because I think the United States is trying to get back to the table as a world leader, the real question is whether or not we can restore the relationships with our allies in the world. That's critical to our national security, to be able to build and strengthen those alliances. I think all of those alliances have been impacted by COVID. And it's an indication that if alliances are going to work in the future, they've got to focus not just on national security, but they've got to focus on pandemics, they've got to focus on climate change, and they've got to focus on other issues that are impacting the world we live in.
Mr. Secretary, we're only 100 days in. It's certainly too early to cast judgment on any administration 100 days in. But I am curious what your thought is on Joe Biden and Tony Blinken and the administration rebuilding some of those bridges to our NATO allies. How have they done so far?
Well, I think they deserve high points for trying to get the United States back in the business of trying to provide leadership in the world. Look, we spent 4 years basically in a process of withdrawing from world leadership into an America First isolationism, and we paid a price for that. It's not going to be easy. I think we've lost a lot of trust in the world as a result of what happened. But if President Biden is able to engage, to go to Europe, to go and visit with our allies, to be able to define what the United States policy will be in working with these countries in the future, then I think there's a good chance he can help restore that trust that we're going to need in confronting China, in confronting Russia, and confronting the other dangerous threats that exist in the world. The only key for the United States in the future is to build strong alliances.
Secretary Panetta, when you took the job as Secretary of Defense, we were about 10 years into the war in Afghanistan. Now, as we approach the 20th anniversary of September 11th, President Biden has pledged to bring home American troops from there. What do you make of that decision and some of the criticism from people like General Petraeus, who say we need to at least keep a small force there for the foreseeable future?
Well, look, there's no question that President Biden's probably taken one of the biggest gambles with regards to foreign policy up to this point by withdrawing our forces there. We all understand the reasons for it, the frustration, but while you can withdraw our forces, I do not believe the United States can withdraw from its responsibility to make sure that Afghanistan never again becomes a safe haven for terrorists. That's why we went to war. That's why we conducted the mission to go after bin Laden, because we were trying to protect this country from another 9/11 attack. And I think it's very important for the United States to continue diplomacy, continue aid, and frankly, continue counterterrorism operations, even if it's from outside the country, in order to make sure that the Taliban doesn't take control of Afghanistan.
Dean Eliot Cohen, let's talk about what Dr. Brzezinski would be concerned about as he looked globally across the world. And I want to talk, if you could touch briefly on Turkey. That was a country that in 2009, 2010, Dr. Brzezinski had great hopes for, and he saw many of those hopes dashed over the preceding years. Things have only gotten worse there. What's America's best approach to Turkey and the region in a post-pandemic world?
Well, that's a lot of questions. Thanks again for having me.
Pick your favorite, Dean. Pick your favorite. This is Dean. This is multi question.
It's a Brzezinski length question.
You just pick the one you want to answer.
So I think the first thing, in terms of how Zbig would have thought about the world, one of the things that was so striking about him is that he could reconcile and combine thinking both about realpolitik and geopolitics and very hard-headed calculations with a concern for American values and ideals. And those are the horns of the dilemma in which American foreign policy is always impaled. And I think he would be wrestling with this. Previous administration really, frankly, didn't care very much about human rights. The Biden administration does. They'll be forced into some very difficult trade-offs as they do it. The second thing that was so striking about Zbig as a foreign policy thinker, though, was the way in which he understood the impact of technology on the conduct of global affairs. And I think he would be looking at the world. I'm sure he'd be thinking about climate change and so on, but he'd be thinking a lot about, well, what are the implications of artificial intelligence, for example, 3D manufacturing, a whole host of things, or even the kinds of technologies that we're seeing unrolled in support of vaccination. And so he'd be, if I was fortunate enough to take part in some of his seminars, I think he'd be quite wide-ranging. I think with regard to Turkey, I think he also, was prepared to be disappointed occasionally. And I suspect that at this point he would have said, the fact of the matter is we're just not likely to have a particularly good relationship with the Erdogan government in Turkey. Which I think is pretty much right. The question is how you manage it, but not transform it.
Yeah. Ambassador Mark Brzezinski, let's talk China. Obviously, it's an extraordinarily important chapter of your father's public service. And of course, in 1979, your first state dinner was held at your McLean farmhouse, despite Mika's best efforts to destroy things.
You always bring this up.
Actually, things did go well. It is a very complicated, complex relationship. There's much to be concerned about with China. But at the same time, we're sharing the global stage with them over the next 50 years, whether our politicians like it or not. What's the best approach forward there?
Joe, you're right. Mika did spill some of the food Ian, Mika, and I were serving on Deng Xiaoping, but the relationship normalized and carried forward for almost 40 years. First, all the Brzezinskis and the Brzezinski family are so honored that Secretary Panetta is doing the Brzezinski lecture at Johns Hopkins University. We are grateful for his service, and my late father admired him tremendously. It is a huge honor.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.